It starts with groceries. That's the thing nobody tells you about history-altering moments. They don't announce themselves. They slide in between the mundane. You're standing in the cereal aisle of a mid-sized supermarket on a Tuesday afternoon, comparing fiber content on two nearly identical boxes, and the fluorescent light above you hums at exactly the frequency it always has. The air smells like refrigerated produce and floor cleaner. Somewhere near the deli counter, a toddler is narrating her own movement through the store in a high, precise voice. Bread, cheese, mama, cheese. There are about 200 people in this building with you. You don't know that number. You never count. Nobody does. And that, as it turns out, will matter. You drop the cereal in the cart. You move toward the dairy section. The coolers glow blue-white and steady, and the condensation on the glass doors catches light in thin vertical lines. You reach for milk, and then the lights go out. Not a flicker. Not a brownout. Off. Completely and immediately off. The refrigerator hum stops at the same moment, which means this isn't a fuse. A fuse kills your section of the grid. This kills everything simultaneously. The overhead lighting, the digital price displays, the self-checkout screens, the muzak that you had stopped consciously hearing 20 minutes ago, but now notice only in its sudden, total absence. The emergency lighting kicks in after 4 seconds. Pale amber. One battery-backed fixture every 30 feet. It turns the supermarket into something that looks like a photograph of itself. People stop moving. This is the first critical phase, and it lasts roughly 90 seconds. Behavioral scientists call it the milling period, the interval between disruption and response, during which people seek information before they seek exits. They look at each other. They look at their phones. They say things like, "Did you feel that?" And what happened? The milling period is useful to you because it is quiet, and quiet is when information travels clearly. You look at your phone. No signal. Not weak signal. No signal. The bars are simply gone, replaced by a single icon you've never had reason to examine before. You try a text. The message sits unsent with a small spinning indicator that does not resolve. This is your first decision point, and you have about 60 seconds to make it before the room changes around you. Most people in this store will do one of two things in the next 3 minutes. They will move toward the front of the store, toward the exit, toward familiarity, toward the place they came in, or they will stay where they are and wait for an announcement that will not come. Both responses are instinctual. Neither is strategic. The front of the store will become congested within 4 minutes. The single-file checkout lanes were designed for transaction flow, not evacuation flow. 200 people funneling through 6 lanes, some still holding baskets, some pushing carts, will create a compression point. Not dangerous yet, but it will be. You don't go to the front. Instead, you stay still for exactly 15 seconds and you listen. The toddler near the deli has gone quiet. The soft background murmur of 200 strangers has shifted in frequency. It's louder now, but not panicked. People are sharing theories. Power company. Probably just the block. My cousin works for the grid and he says this happens in summer. The theories are wrong, but the tone is still cooperative. This is the window. You think about what you know. No lights, no cell signal, no store systems. A simultaneous total failure across all infrastructure in this building. A fuse doesn't do this. A local outage doesn't kill cell towers. Something upstream has failed. Something large enough to take the grid and the network at the same moment. You have been inside this store for 22 minutes. You know, vaguely, its layout. You think about what's here. Water in aisle 7, canned goods in aisle 4, a pharmacy counter in the back left corner that will be locked, but probably has first aid supplies behind a counter that reaches your shoulder. You think about your car in the parking lot, which has a 3/4 tank of gas, a phone charger plugged into the console, and a wool blanket in the trunk from last winter. These are not dramatic assets. They are ordinary ones. Ordinary assets, accessed before the crowd reaches the same conclusion, are what survival usually looks like. By minute 8, the tone in the store has changed. Someone near the front registers has started shouting. Not screaming, shouting. The specific vocal register of a person who has decided that volume equals authority. You can't make out the words, but you can read the effect. The crowd at the front compresses slightly, and a ripple of new movement passes backward through the store like a wave moving the wrong direction. People who were drifting forward now stop and look. This is the cascade mechanism. It doesn't require accurate information. It requires only that a few people respond visibly, because humans in uncertain environments calibrate behavior by watching other humans. Studies of crowd behavior in evacuations consistently show that the first 20 seconds of visible panic in a small subgroup can shift the emotional baseline of an entire room. You're watching it happen in real time. You take a handbasket from the stack near the pharmacy counter. You move deliberately, not quickly. Quick movement in a crowd draws attention. Deliberate movement creates the impression of purpose, and people in uncertain environments unconsciously defer to apparent purpose. You walk to aisle 7. You take 2 1-liter bottles of water. You take a box of protein bars from the end cap. You walk to the pharmacy counter and you speak quietly to the pharmacist, who is still standing behind the counter looking at a dead computer screen with the expression of someone waiting for it to resume. You ask if she has a paper bag you can use. She gives you one without asking why. You fill it. This takes 4 minutes. You have spent 12 minutes in this emergency. The crowd at the front of the store is beginning to make sounds that no longer sound cooperative. Second decision point. The front exit is no longer the right choice. Not because it's dangerous, not yet, but because it will funnel you through the densest part of the crowd, past the shouting, past the people beginning to argue about whether the doors have locked automatically, past the child who is now crying near register 3, past the 45 seconds of friction that feel brief but are not. Supermarkets have loading docks. This is a fact that is true about nearly every supermarket built after 1970, and it is almost never the first thing people think about, because loading docks are back of house. They exist behind a set of swinging double doors marked employees only, usually located at the rear of the store near the stock rooms and the compressor units for the freezers. The doors are not locked from the inside. Fire code prohibits it. The dock itself exits to a service road that runs parallel to the parking lot. You know this because 6 months ago you watched a video about a fire in a shopping center, and the anchor of the piece said, almost as an aside, that most casualties in commercial building emergencies occur at the primary entrance, not at service exits. You filed it somewhere and mostly forgot it. You remember it now. The double doors are exactly where you expected them to be. You push through and enter the stockroom, which smells like cardboard and machine oil and is lit by a single emergency fixture mounted high on the cinder block wall. Pallets of goods line the space. 2 stock employees are sitting on a pallet of bottled water, looking at their own dead phones. One of them looks up at you. You say, I think the loading dock exits to the service road. Is it unlocked? He says, yeah, it's always unlocked from this side. You say, you should probably tell people that. You don't wait to see if he does. The loading dock door is a heavy steel roll-up, partially open, fixed at waist height to allow airflow. You duck under it and emerge into the service alley behind the store. The sky is unchanged. It is a flat, ordinary Tuesday sky, the kind that doesn't communicate anything. But you notice something immediately. The traffic on the main road adjacent to the parking lot has stopped completely. Not backed up, stopped. Cars at angles. A bus is diagonal across 2 lanes, engine off. Someone has gotten out of a pickup truck and is standing in the road, looking at his phone with both hands, the posture of someone who cannot process what he is seeing. Modern vehicles built after 2010 contain between 40 and 150 separate electronic control units. A sufficiently powerful electromagnetic disruption, the kind historically associated with high-altitude nuclear detonation, the kind that intelligence communities have modeled in classified infrastructure reports for decades, can disable those systems simultaneously, at scale, across a geographic area measured in hundreds of miles. You are looking at the parking lot. Your car starts. It is a 2009 model, old enough to predate the most vulnerable systems. You feel the engine turn over and you sit for a moment with your hands on the wheel, and you let yourself understand what this means. Not just the power, not just the phones, the cars, the grid, the timing. 60 minutes ago, this was a grocery run. You pull out of the service road and onto a side street heading north, away from the main arterial, away from the stopped traffic and the people beginning to gather around the bus. The roads are clear here, for now. In your passenger seat, 2 liters of water, protein bars, a paper pharmacy bag, a phone at 41% battery that cannot reach anything. The radio is static except for one frequency, far left on the AM dial, where a voice is reading coordinates and civil emergency instructions in a flat, unhurried tone that sounds pre-recorded. You listen. You don't fully understand what it's saying yet. Behind you, the supermarket is a pale rectangle in the afternoon light, ordinary looking from the outside. Inside, there are roughly 200 people who are now, 7 minutes after the lights went out, beginning to move in the specific, pressured way that crowds move when cooperative behavior starts to give way to competitive behavior. It will not become violent immediately. Research on crowd disasters. Bradford, Station Nightclub, the 1979 Who concert, consistently shows a lag of 15 to 40 minutes between initial disruption and the first serious injury. Most of those injuries are not caused by malice. They are caused by geometry. Too many bodies, too few exits, too much forward momentum. The stock employee may have told people about the loading dock. You don't know. You left. That is the decision you will think about later, in some quieter moment that may or may not come, when there is room to think about the people you passed in that amber half-light. Right now, you think about the road. You think about where the water treatment facilities are relative to your neighborhood. You think about your apartment, which has a gas stove and a bathtub you have never thought to fill in advance. The voice on the AM radio continues, calm and repeating. 60 minutes ago, you were choosing between 2 boxes of cereal. The city ahead of you is very quiet, and quiet, you're starting to understand, is not the same thing as safe. What happens in the next 6 hours will depend on decisions made in the next 6 minutes, and you are already moving.